you guys today on YouTube? By the way, I'm doing pretty good myself today, but today I'm going to talk to you guys a bit more about my system here and about antennas on this old vintage piece of technology here from the late 1960s to the 1970s. By the way, this is a Toshiba stereo receiver SA320 model here, and I very love it a whole lot, and it works just fine. And you guys are wondering, why don't you just go out and replace it and buy a new one? Well, I could if I had the extra money, but why do I need to replace it if it still functions and it still works? And by the way, this does no longer have any value to it anymore, but I did some upgrades to it and some modifications to it. You guys can see this was been stained by me. Okay, please do the stain outside. This used to have actual a laminate cover on top of it. That was the first thing to be upgraded on this. This used to be just plain old wood, but now it looks a whole lot better and a whole lot nicer. And the only thing I did was I put a different style antenna connector on the back of my stereo on using different antennas. By the way, you guys can see, I don't know, you can't see the back of my stereo, but what I'm pointing to is I actually have a BCN connector female on the back of my stereo. Now, if you are not good at soldering, don't try this attempt yourself, and you're not good at drilling holes in metals, be very careful not to damage anything component-wise inside your receiver. Now, yes, it was a little bit difficult to do this myself. Actually, this was my first time modding this vintage piece of technology, but it still works just fine. Now, I talked about it before in the past about this unit, but I don't think I actually explained myself more in detail on why I did this and why I need a different type of connectors. Now, you're saying myself here, why do you need an antenna for your radio? Well, one thing, you need an antenna to be able to listen to the radio, and that's the one thing you really need to do. Now, this has two tuners in it. It has FM and it has AM. Okay, but the biggest problem was for me, because this actually had the old school twist-on connectors, the screw-on connectors, was you actually had to use 4 wires to get the AM and FM tuner and stations on this unit. I only listen to the FM and not the AM, because the AM being, we really don't pick it up here because there's only certain places you can pick up AM. But I decided to do this, and I think it was a good idea. But the actual used to make adapters, if you guys can see this, this is one of the old school adapters right here. You guys can see it is a cable line. This was made typically for TVs. You guys can see this actually had the 2 little crimped on little guys here, and these would actually go onto the terminals, and you could put your cable line right here on the end of this. This is actually female, and you plug the male end over here and you screw it in, and you actually have cable TV. But these little adapters are very, very hard to get. I only have one of these, but I don't use this anymore because I used to use it a long time ago with this receiver. But this has now been retired because I can't find any of these anymore. But do hold on to this. Please do not lose this, because you might want to go back to this eventually. But with me, with the modification I've done to this I don't need to go back to. I can put this in my drawer, and I will hold on to that. That is something you want to hold on to in case if you decide you want to sell it or get rid of it or donate it to somebody else who wants a very vintage piece of technology. But it's very nice here, guys. It is a nice setup. Got everything 100% working with this unit. And yes, this is all analog, by the way, and I do have some digital items down now. This is only meant for listening to audio. This is not meant for your TVs, okay? But you can put the analog audio from your TV to your stereo itself to get that as well. But let's get more on talking about antennas. Now, here we have this Philips antenna, typically again designed for televisions. You guys can see this actually has a F connector, a male F connector on the back of this cable that you guys can see. Now, typically when you're going to buy something like this, typically it will not be compatible with the radio. Typically what you have to do is you have to chop the end of it off to able to attach it to your receiver like this old vintage one. Now, new ones are coming with the FM or AM tuners, and also with the F connectors already pre-installed on most new ones, but not on older ones. If you go back to like the older units like this one, this doesn't have that. It wasn't built like that. It was built for you to use 4 wires for the tuners for FM or AM. And you can use 2 different types of antennas, outdoor and indoor antennas. But if you are going to use an outdoor antenna, make sure you do ground the antenna and make sure you do ground your system. Make sure it's no lightning spikes or truck issue with your stereo. You want to make sure you do everything right the first time. But here is a cable I kind of had. It already had the connector, the F connector male port on it, and I put a male BCN connector on the other end by just doing some experiments and stuff, and this cable does work, by the way. By the way, I do have to be careful with this because it is not clamped on, it's just hold on by friction by the cable, and I will be testing that out as well on this unit. And I do have a female separator or connector. It's a single connector here. You guys can put your cable here and then on cable here. It's a splitter. If you guys want to know what this is, it's called a single splitter. That is what I am going to be using for doing this test. And why did I do this? Well, because I don't want to have to fiddle around so much with different type of wiring. And you guys can see I have this black wire here. If you guys can see, this is actual my main antenna. You guys can see this. This is actually my main antenna wire. This is a BCN connector as well, and that actually connects directly on the back of my stereo. And I really enjoy listening to my FM stations. Now, of course, not everything picks up like it's supposed to, because you do get some static because my antenna is stuck to my window. I did a blog on that a long time ago, and it still seems to work absolutely nice. Well, let's get more in depth of this type of cable. This cable, all you gotta do is you just push it, you turn it, you lock it in. You just the exact same thing with this, you just screw it in and everything else. But you know, it's all good. Everything's good with this radio. But if you really want to go buy a receiver to upgrade your receiver, that's totally up to you guys. You can have the luxury of doing that. But if you have a limited income like me and you don't have a lot of money and you want something very cheap, this is the cheapest way to actually go with doing this setup. Thus for me, and it works just fine, guys. I enjoy listening to my FM radio. But antennas is mostly for everything nowadays, like TVs, radios, any type of connectors you want to use for your stereo, that's totally fine. And again, the exact same thing, you can get away with using this, but don't need it. I don't need it for the setup because I don't want to have a lot of wires hanging and dangling everywhere in my room. And that's the biggest problem. I do not like wires a lot, but I can cover them up if I want. But with a single wire like this, I don't have to deal with looking at ugly wires tacked up on my wall or dangling everywhere else, because that's what I used to use years ago down at my old house, and I had so many freaking ass wires everywhere. Copper wire. You can use electrical copper wire. Would be a good antenna. You just have to get a nice, good feel of it to be able to use for your old school vintage piece of technology as well. But yes, it is a pretty good setup. You guys can see I have the volume turned down. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the speakers on. This actually has a way I can turn the speakers on and off by hitting the on switch over here. And we're going to go ahead and tune into a station. And we'll just have to change the knob here. You guys can see I just have to tune in. Yes, this is old school, guys. You guys should remember this. It was from the 60s to the 70s vintage piece of technology. But we're going to go ahead and turn it up and see what we get. But you guys can see, plays this fine. It does have a bit of static to it, but that's nothing I can do about that, guys, because that's just how this old stereo works. And having this antenna with the cable works just fine. I love vintage pieces of equipment, and I can do different modifications to this equipment if I need to. Now, in the future, I might upgrade eventually, but not today, not now. Too dang expensive for the newer receivers as well, because eventually you'll have to use a receiver with your TVs and everything else. But this is just totally separate from my television, guys. But the antennas seem to work absolutely fine with this radio itself. I really enjoy this type of technology and type of modification I can do with antennas. Very simple, it's not hard to do, but please don't do it if you don't know how to use a soldering iron or a drill, because you can damage your equipment if you go in too deep. You might end up destroying a capacitor or anything like that in your stereo, because I will actually show you, I think I have a blog somewhere on my channel. I took this top off and showing you what the inside of the receiver looks like. But if you guys are going new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment down below if you guys want to know more about the modification I did with this receiver. Please give this blog a thumbs up if you like old vintage pieces of equipment like I do. Alright guys, bye. We'll see you hopefully in the next vlog. Thank you for watching. Peace. Later guys.